All right, joining me now, looking forward to this. A little out of the box here on SI Media with Jimmy Traina, but I know this is going to be good because the big news over the weekend was Roundball Rock officially coming back to the NBC coverage of the NBA. And it was only fitting to have this man on this week on the show, John Tesh, the composer of that song. John, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun working with the new team at NBC.
I want to get into that. I know you have a radio show, and just looking through doing research on you, you've done a million things. Uh, is it correct in saying the two things you're most known for are composing Roundball Rock and Entertainment Tonight?
Yeah, probably now. Yeah, for sure. I did it. I was a local newscaster for a very long time. So I mean, I grew up in Garden City, not far from you, and didn't realize until after I got out of there that it was pretty much a performing arts school. You know, everybody had to be in the band or the orchestra and theater, and this was. And I was born in 1952, so everybody when I was like 10 years old, everybody was in a garage band. And for people who don't know, that's an actual thing. I mean, that's how you roll up the garage and then you're in the garage playing because nobody wants you in the house. The neighbors don't want the sound either. But that was, yeah. So we were all, and it hit in Hicksville, Long Island. Billy Joel was in a rival band to ours. Wasn't much of a rivalry. If he didn't want a gig, we got it. And a bunch of other people were in bands in those days. So yeah, I grew up playing trumpet and also playing keyboards, but went to college to study physics and chemistry at North Carolina State.
And then it ends up, and I want to get into the CBS gig that you mentioned, local news.
Right,
So
right.
I'm curious though, between Roundball Rock and Entertainment Tonight, what do more people talk to you about or get into with you about? What is the bigger one there?
Yeah, it's changed a bit. So I was on. I worked for CBS Sports for about 8 or 9 years. I was one of the anthology announcers, reporters, and so I covered everything from downhill skiing to figure skating and track and field and Tour de France, most notably for me because I was hired as a announcer and writer for that, more documentary style with a guy named David Michaels. Al Michaels' brother was a great producer, and they counted on me for music because back in the 80s, and all this stuff is coming back now, but back in the 80s was a lot of synthesizer stuff like Tangerine Dream and a lot of those bands that were using the 80s sounds. And so those were the types of events that I did. And I wasn't really known for doing that, but that was probably where I learned the most about composing. And then out of the blue, got a call in 1986 from Entertainment Tonight and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this show? We know that you're into music. You only have to work 4 hours, and you can use our facilities if you want to work on your music." So yeah, that from 86 to 96, and then sort of broke out with a PBS special, music special, and left television and just toured for years. But during that period of time, sort of 1989-ish was when I heard through the grapevine that NBC had gotten the coverage for the NBA, and they were looking for a new theme. And that was just nobody came to me and said, "Hey, can you write a theme?" It just people were sending in ideas.
Gotcha. Well, just getting back to that quick question about what fans usually want to discuss with.
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
Entertainment Tonight or Roundball Rock. I'm just curious.
Yeah. It's gonna go like this. If you come to one of our concerts, it's like I'll start talking about something, and then we'll end up on a different planet.
I understand.
So back in the day, it was that Entertainment Tonight theme in airports, right? And now it really is Roundball Rock, which is strange because when NBC went off the air with the NBA and with that song in 2001 through 2002, the song really went, I would say, like on the shelf, right?
Right.
And I think it was 2002 or 3 when YouTube came along, and the song ended up there. The story of how I wrote the song on a PBS special ended up on there, and then people started learning how to play the song, and so then it started to become more popular. And then when people were like, I long for the halcyon days of Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, and so people would tell you that they were playing that in their living room when the NBA would come on.
It is amazing. We sports fans, especially, we love nostalgia. So we'll get into that. Did you do the Entertainment Tonight theme song? Or that was
A lot of people think that, but
because they
I get.
sound. Am I crazy to say they sound a little similar?
Just sort of in the same key, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're, yeah. No, I didn't write it.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and you know what? Really, I did arrange it though. I want for one season, but what really made the difference for Roundball Rock, the theme was when Saturday Night Live did a spoof, right?
Right.
And when they did the ba 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 basketball thing, and that's when people started singing. They will sing that even today. They'll sing that chorus to me in an airport, and it's still, people still think maybe that should be the theme. It's if you look on Twitter, people will say, no, that's a lyrics forward song.
It's funny when the news broke. NBC officially announced it this past Sunday that Roundball Rock would be back as the theme song for their coverage, and I had tweeted the news out to my followers, and one person wrote back and said, does no one watch college basketball? Fox has been using the song. And it's like, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, shape, or form, but like, it's an NBA song. Fox could use it. It's an NBA song.
Yeah, yeah, and listen, especially with this song, I follow a lot of social media, and especially on Instagram. And when it went off the air, off of the NBA, and was off for decades, Fox came and said, "Hey, we'd be interested in using this for some of our regional basketball games." And Eric Shanks, who's the president of Fox. And I said, hey, let's, okay, yeah, so you can have this for a little while until we get back into the NBA. And so they've used it. And so the responses have been, oh, this is really cool, or it's been, no, this is an NBA song. And so, just that fight goes on for sure.
So now it's back. It'll be back starting next season. When you have to sort of, I don't know if it's you, but your team or you has to negotiate with NBC about the song, are you part of that negotiation, or you leave it up to lawyers and people like that, or do you get in the weeds?
That's a really good inside baseball question, and the answer is yes, only because I ran a record company and then sold it to Warner Brothers, for many years ago, and so I know the business. But I'm not a record company mogul by any means. But NBC realized, to the credit of Rick Cordella, the now president of NBC Sports, realized that, and it's easy to see this, right? When you put something on Instagram about the song, or you find a Conan O'Brien clip or something, and people talk about where they were when the song first came on, the feeling that they get when they hear the first few notes, and so he was keenly aware of the nostalgia factor. In fact, I think they just did a deal with the original announcer to use his voice, the AI version of his voice as the intro. Yeah, so you're going to hear that now. You'll hear these things. The thing that was odd for me was that early on, when I made an announcement back in August, whenever they were doing it, that we were going to Nashville and recording a different version of the song, I got pounded on by people who just said, no, we want the original version. Don't mess with this, dude.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But no, Rick and I actually negotiated the contract for the song together. Normally it would be, a whole bunch of attorneys in there. Of course, there have to be attorneys because they want to do different cut downs of the song, and how long is it going to be with us, and all the rest of that. But it was just Rick and I basically on a Zoom call talking about it.
I'm very curious, and I would never ask you about money or dollar amounts, but I'm fascinated about negotiations for something like that. In terms of, is it just as simple as they're going to use the song you composed and they're going to pay you, or are there other levels to the negotiations besides that?
Well, especially with NBC, they have many properties now. There's the legacy broadcasting. There's Peacock, USA. there's there's the international,
Olympics, yeah.
All of that, the Olympics. Yeah, we've done deals for that as well. So there's a lot of. I mean, as far as the financial part of it, somebody like NBC or CBS back in the day when I was working there, they pay a license fee. And then, you've heard of BMI, right? But
Yes.
it depends on how many times a song gets played. Then you get 25 cents for times played, whatever. But it can, it can put, one of your kids through college, definitely.
Okay, so let me piggyback on that just for my listeners, because I do find, so let's say there's an NBA game that usually goes 2.5, 3 hours, and
Right.
they play it in the intro. They usually play it going to commercial. So if they play it, let's say just round numbers, let's say they play it 20 times during a 3-hour game, you
Right.
get paid 20 times. Is that how? Whatever the BMI is that how it works?
Yeah, it is. Although it's so confusing because BMI is a not for profit, and what they do is they take every 6 months or 4 months they take a pool of all the money that's been made by artists, and then they dole it out. I'm not sure exactly how this works, depending on how many times your song played relative to the other songs, right?
Right.
So you can't just say it's going to be $1.50 every time. It's much more confusing than that.
Got it.
Now there are ancillary things that happen when if you've got a song like this and so for the last, knowing that this was going to happen, for the last 8 months, I've been recording another sports record, and that'll be out at the same time that Roundball Rock re-premieres on NBC. It's just called the sports album, but it's just.
And what's that going to be like? Give me a little description.
Yeah, it's just real. I mean, it's purely instrumental, and it's songs that were inspired by the Tour de France, Ironman, triathlon, downhill skiing, and it's a lot of people are like how do you start writing a sports song? And a lot of it back in the '80s, and now as it comes back, is a lot of these synthesizers, that are basically just a combination of a bunch of oscillators. Everybody's heard of the Moog synthesizers, and so you want the heroics sound. So it's like stuff like that. And so now you've got to, and then if you just go like this, you have a cue for the Tour de France right there.
So is the hopes that, listen, you put out an album, you're putting out an album because this is what you want to do. This is your passion. But is there hope that maybe another network might hear a song off that album and then they want to use it and you can,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sure. Yeah. You're definitely in the weeds now. Yeah. I mean, yes, we and that's part of, I have to say that, knowing back in the day in 1989, and having worked for years at CBS Sports and then the two Olympics at NBC, I really wasn't. Let's just say that the kind of person I am is I really want to figure out how everything works, and so I was in. David Michaels, the producer, would tell you I was, to his misery, I was in a truck a lot while he was editing, right? And so I could see him and Victor Frank, his AD, and how they would put together the documentary style coverage of the Tour de France. And so what would happen with that process is that I would be in another part of a truck and I would have synthesizers like this, and I would score that footage. And so when you see the rhythm of how directors and producers work, you understand really what a song needs. So for Roundball Rock, right, there's a thing called the handoff, and you can learn this by listening to John Williams or even Stravinsky. Is that you have a theme which is like what. Right, that's the main theme, and then when you get to the middle of it, you hand that off to the strings, which would be playing. And then you have to have then you have to have a section, especially for something like basketball or football, where the announcers are going to be talking over it, and that for Roundball Rock would be and then the build, right, and then back to the theme. Right. So knowing that and knowing how they work, I think gave me a little more of an advantage.
Just hearing that, my brain just goes to Knicks, Bulls, Bob Costas,
Right,
crazy
sure.
arena.
Yeah, yeah,
It is
yeah.
and it is wild because it it feels like the appreciation for that song is so much deeper now than it was then. Not that people didn't love it then, obviously they did, but it is that adage about you don't know what you got till it's gone. My God,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
song is the ultimate proof of it.
Yeah, and it's dude, talk about humbling. I mean, I've written hundreds of songs, and then and people just latched onto that, and when I turned it in 1989, it was just another theme, and
Right.
even when it was playing all those years with during the Showtime era, it was another theme. People weren't going crazy for it. It was just like, oh, here comes basketball.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when the Saturday Night Live comes along and does their bit, and people are of course always they're comparing what's happening now to the quote unquote good old days, and then the theme
Yep.
comes back around. So it has literally, and it sounds like a hackneyed phrase, it literally has taken on a life of its own.
No, it
And
has
so
absolutely.
I'm just here for the ride,
Yeah.
if you will.
When the news came out that NBC was going to be back in the NBA business, news came out, I guess, last year.
Mm-hmm.
Did you immediately think, oh, there might be a chance here to rekindle the old flame? Or did you not think NBC maybe would want to go backwards? What was your initial reaction when you heard the NBC was getting back in the business with the NBA?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. I mean, at first I thought, yeah, oh, this could be cool. Right. And then I thought, oh, we should probably sweeten it up. And that's when I was doing a podcast interview, and when I mentioned that we were going to go to Nashville with a symphony there and create another version, like, no, don't touch
Yeah.
the original
Yeah.
theme. But I did hear rumblings, well, it's, that's then, that's a bygone era. We should do something, new,
Right.
but what the proof was really, and this is just, for marketing 101, right? Is like, go online, throw up some videos and see what people are saying about it. So I actually did that. I went on our Instagram channel, and I had a couple other friends, and I just started putting videos up there of Conan O'Brien doing a thing about the song. The stuff that I did at Avalon, where all the strings were playing it, people playing it on the xylophone. There's a kid who plays it on with ping pong balls and things like that, just to see what the reaction would be, right? And you
Right.
get that immediately. And
Yeah.
so it was like, well, okay, so there's still something here, but again, to his credit, Rick Cordella said, okay, John, we want to bring back this theme. Let's work on this together. And so that's when we did the thing for the Kentucky Derby. And there'll be all kinds of things happening between now and,
Yeah.
and October, I'm sure.
What were negotiations smooth? Was it a bumpy road? Did you say, I mean, I would imagine just from a business standpoint, if I were you, this is how I would think. When you see what the reaction is, maybe add a 0 to the contract if you're NBC or something like that.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah. Good.
but no, it's yeah, you should have been in on the team here.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, listen, I'm very, very happy. It's great because it's we did a deal for 11 years. I've been through contracts with Paramount, CBS, NBC, and they're usually like 2 years. My first contract with Paramount Television for Entertainment Tonight was 13 weeks. So when
Right.
you're making a decision for 11 years, it's a big deal, because a lot of those people that are there now might not be there anymore. They might have get kicked upstairs, or I might not be here anymore. Who knows?
Right.
But so you really have to figure it out. And what I was really most concerned about, to be honest with you, is I wanted to have some sort of control over where the song was going to go, right?
Right.
And how, because we want NBC to have the right to re-record the song, right? But of course, to do different versions of it and things like that down the road. And so they have that, and we wanted to make sure they weren't just handcuffed and just buying, if you will, or licensing the original version of a song, that they could have it. They could, if they wanted to, have an orchestra come in there. For somebody who's going to be so aggressive with the music, they need to have really need to have the power of change in the song. They need to have that versatility.
And is your stance as the composer, the owner of that song, like you don't want them overusing it or using it in areas other than maybe sports, or you if they purchase it or license it, they can do what they want with it. What's your stance as the sort of the owner of the
Yeah,
rights?
I think it's. I think I've been through this before. I think you can be a little narcissistic with music, and that's why the government has ruled that anybody can record this song. You can, and people have. Not
Right.
everybody can use it, for NBC or for a theme on television or on cable, but it really is it's a free country when it comes to recording the song. So I used to be like that, but now the NBC and I, not to get too far into the contract, we have an agreement that we can have that conversation between us, and we'll agree on it. And I just, I don't think I've ever negotiated with anybody who was so creative, as Rick. I mean, he really had a vision from the very beginning, and wanted to create, a new look and everything, right? But also wanted to respect the nostalgic feeling that people were getting from the song.
I hope we'll see you live, maybe on opening night on their first game, maybe
That would
playing
be
it in the
fun.
arena.
That
Yeah,
would really be fun.
yeah.
When we did the piece for the Kentucky Derby, they rented out the Intuit Dome, right? And they just, I'm not sure if you saw the piece. They had
I did.
they saw
Yeah, yeah.
all their guys humming the song, which happens a lot. But I was there for a full day on this spinning turntable, and they had the lasers and they had all the lights going and everything, and me playing just on a keyboard. But they have some footage that they haven't used yet that is pretty incredible, and there's so many. I'm dealing with like 9 different departments over there, and it's really a lot of fun because they're so creative.
Right. I want to move on to like other aspects of your career, but let me just wrap up Roundball Rock here with two quick ones. You had mentioned it's all over the internet if you Google sort of like how this song came about,
Yeah.
that you created it one night in France and recorded it sort of like over a phone. What I want to know about, and if you could share this with my listeners, is how it becomes where NBC hears it and then NBC wants it, and what that was like for you.
Yeah, there's somewhere on the internet. There's a very long version of this story, but like I said, I was in the sports world, right? So I knew a lot of producers, not only at CBS but NBC, and everybody always moves around. Like, for example, Eric Shanks used to be at CBS, now he's at Fox, and they just move around all over the place because it's a real you can't just all of a sudden have all the talent that you need to jump into a production role at a sports network, because it's difficult. It's much more difficult than news, if I can say that. But what happened was, I was in, and I've told the story before, but I was in France covering the Tour de France. I was still working for Entertainment Tonight. I had left the Tour de France coverage for CBS, and David Michaels called me up and said, "Hey, can you come for 4 weeks and do the tour with me, one last time?" And I said, "Okay, sure, fine." Got that permission from Entertainment Tonight. Went there, and it's brutal. Of course, the race is brutal. Covering it is just maniacal, because you're covering the races, and then you're sending in 2 hours of a documentary every weekend, and they're wall-to-wall music, right? And so I was in Megève, France, during one of the stages. And I got the idea in the middle of the night, 2:00 in the morning, because I'd heard that NBC was going to use a new theme, right? So I knew Terry O'Neill, I knew Tommy Roy, I knew Dick Ebersol through David Michaels, and so I thought, what would this thing sound like? And I was not known as a musician, and so so that melody came through my head at 2:00 in the morning, woke me up, and I knew. And it's funny when I tell this story on stage, people laugh because they've all done it. I knew that if I didn't have anything to write it down with, no recorder, and so I called my answering machine back in the States and left that message for myself that I still have, which
Brilliant
is
brilliant move.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you talk to Hans Zimmer or any of these guys, they're doing that stuff all the time on the phone,
Yeah.
and a lot of times for me, it's garbage. It's like I can't even tell what it is. But when I got back home, it was like fully formed. It was. and then the second part was, and I got cut off, then it was like the second part was, so I had two big parts in there, and then I knew that I needed that bed for Marv to talk over,
Right.
brought to you by Geico, and like it's a bad Marv Albert invitation. And so I was thinking I had something. I called my band, and I got like 10 string players, right? And I said, hey, let's play this thing. And I played it, and I thought, gosh, there's something wrong with this. And I recorded it rather. And so I got my Betamax tape machine, and I had some recordings of last week's basketball game, and I counted the tempo of the fast breaks. And normally, like a song, like a theme is 120 beats a minute, which is basically like a Donna Summer disco song. But the fast break was at 132. Like that. So I set the tempo at that, and then it became and you can do that with the song today, because what they played, Terry O'Neill calls me up, right, and says, hey John, we like this song. Let's use it. Like, okay, and that's
just like that. Just
well,
like
I gave
that.
it to them. Then this is a message to creatives, right? A message to musicians, especially, is I gave it to them for free. And so I had the publishing on the song. So I had the publishing and the writing, which means I had complete control over the song.
Good.
So none of this stuff would have happened if Terry and those guys hadn't been so nice to me. But the original song, the OG version of the song, that's still the demo. That's the demo.
Got it.
Nobody wants to re-record it. Yeah.
Right. So you send it off to them. They call. They say we want it, and it comes together just like that. It's like, because you don't think in today's day and age a business deal would come together that easily. It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, Terry and I were friends for years. He hired me at CBS, and then he was at NBC. And when he called me up in the newsroom at CBS, I was a CBS correspondent for years. He called me up and said, hey, John, we'd like you to come work for the network sports. And I said, Terry, first I thought it was a prank. And I said, Terry, I think you got the wrong guy. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I can't name 3 NBA teams, or basketball, whatever, football. And he said, no. The sports we would have in mind for you, nobody knows the rules to them. And I said, ha ha ha. And the next thing I was in Egypt covering Mr. Universe. So he was right.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I loved doing that stuff because it was great. It's very exciting. And then I ended up doing the 92 and 96 Olympics.
Have you become an NBA fan since because of the song? Are you watching the playoffs, or you don't care? You could say you don't care.
No, I'm a huge fan. I am. It's funny.
Okay.
It's a loaded question. I'm a huge fan, but I will tell you that my son Gib, who's a massive fan of the Lakers, it was about he's 43 now, so it must have been 10, 15 years ago. He says, I'm his stepdad, so he calls me Dada. And so he said, Dada, I want you, it was a Friday, and he goes, I want you to wrap up anything you're doing, and I want you to meet me at 3:00 in the driveway and dress casually. And I said, what are we doing? He goes, you'll find out. So I get to the drive, I walk outside, and he's got all this Lakers garb on. I said, what are we doing? He goes, you wrote the theme to NBA basketball, and you've never been to a professional basketball game. We're going to do it now. And so he had gotten these great seats to the Lakers, and I'm like an idiot sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, these guys are huge!" So
what year was this? Just curious. What year was?
Oh
this?
Gosh, this must have been I don't know, 1995 or something like that, or
wow,
or maybe even I know, yeah. So it was great. Yeah, I have a great appreciation for the sport, and I love those documentaries, Redeem Team and the rest of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big sports fan, and it's I can't write music for anything else. I've tried, but it's
interesting.
The music that I like to write and it's been described as big and bombastic. Yeah.
Two last things on Roundball, and then we'll switch gears for a minute. Have you gotten a lot of reactions over the years, back when it was used in the 90s to now, from players? Have you met players in person who say stuff about the song, or have you come across NBA players who've mentioned how much they love the song, or you don't interact with them much?
I've never I never, but I've
Okay.
seen it. I've seen it online. I've seen
Yeah,
people
yeah.
be interviewed about it. The most interesting thing that Gib and I did recently was we went to the Friday crossover experience in San Francisco for the NBA All Star Weekend, and we went there with a camera, and we walked around there, and I had a boombox in my hand, and we were doing research. Right, we didn't have a deal with NBC yet, and I just asked people. I said, hey, can you describe the 1990s? To me, and they could tell you where they were. They could tell you where they're all about their kids, and then there were people who were younger who they're actually basketball players for playing now who never heard the theme back then. And I would play the theme through this little boombox, right? And they would go, "Oh, that's the NBA theme," you know. And what they would always say to a man and a woman was, "That's the NBA." They often didn't say Roundball Rock or it's a John Tesh song. They would say that's the NBA and NBC.
Right.
And that's
absolutely.
and that's why when Rick and I were talking about it, was this song, and that's why sometimes people say it sounds weird if it's on college basketball. But the song was born on an answering machine, and then it grew up on NBA and NBC.
Yeah. And the last thing we've mentioned a couple of times, the SNL spoof, Sudeikis played you. Did you know they were going to spoof you? Do you get a heads up in the entertainment business? Like, oh, SNL's going to spoof you. And if you didn't get the heads up, how did you first discover the SNL spoof?
It's one of my favorite stories. I'm a New Yorker like you. I left when I was 18 to try and find my fortune. And so here I'm out, but all my friends were back in New York. So here I am in Los Angeles, and my, about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, my phone starts blowing up. And it's, "Are you okay with this?" "Oh my gosh, this really happened." Texting. And okay, do they have the rights to do this? I'm not like, what the heck? So I call my friend Lenny, who's a good resource for me, and I said, "What's going on?" And he goes, "They're making fun of you on Saturday Night Live." He said, "You should watch." And so I was like, "Oh gosh." So I said to my wife Connie, I said, "Okay, we have to watch Saturday Night Live." Like, what is this going to be? And it comes on, and they're dressed. First of all, I don't have a brother, Dave Tesh, but anyway, that's what makes it funny too. Yeah. And they're dressed. Sudeikis Jason was dressed exactly like I was dressed. And he had the same hairdo back in the day, and the same vest, and and all of it. And I watched this thing, and I turned to Connie and I said, "What do you think?" And she goes, "It's the best thing that ever happened to you in your life."
Absolutely.
And it was. It really was. It was just. And then we, gosh, maybe just a year ago, we're at a buffet here out at one of the resorts here with our grandkids, and we run into Vince Vaughn. And Connie runs, and I'm 6'6", and he must be 6'7". And Connie runs up to him and he goes, hey, do you remember the thing you did with the Roundball Rock, the John Tesh song? And he goes, yeah, that was funny. He goes, "Well, this is John." And he's like, "Oh, hey, man, how's it going?"
That's great.
If you listen to the bit again on YouTube, listen for the fact that Vince didn't really know who I was, right? And so he's reading the cards, and he goes, "Oh, Tess. He wrote the theme to Entertainment Tonight." But it's a funny bit.
I was going to say, how could Vince Vaughn not know who you? Well,
I don't know. Maybe he just blew the line. I don't know, but that's the way I tell the story.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I want to get into Entertainment Tonight a little bit before we wrap it, but let me start with this, because when you were so nice enough to agree to come on, I said, and in my head, I'm thinking Roundball Rock, Entertainment Tonight. I could do a whole podcast just on those two things. Because I used to, Entertainment Tonight and sort of the celebrity culture was so different when you did that show from 86 to 96. I mean, now it seems everyone hates celebrities, and there's like a political angle to it, which I don't want to get into. But there's also, like, back then a celebrity was actually a celebrity.
Right.
A TikTok person and influencers and reality show nonsense are not celebrities in my world, because of when I grew up. Mm-hmm. And back then, celebrity was such a big deal, and Entertainment Tonight was a big, you'd find out if someone had a new movie coming out, a new album coming out. Did you love doing Entertainment Tonight? Was that a blast for you? Or because the celebrity culture was much different back then?
Yeah, I mean, I had it was a strange thing for me, because I had done gosh, maybe 15 years of local news in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then Orlando. And this is as a 19-year-old. And then Nashville, where I was anchoring the news. Pat Sajak was the weatherman, and Oprah Winfrey was a reporter at the rival station. This was 1974 to 76. And then I was sending out tapes like anybody would do, and I ended up getting this job as a correspondent at CBS in New York, the Channel 2, as you know, Channel 2. And in that newsroom was John Stossel, Meredith Vieira, Arnold Diaz. Right after us was Bill O'Reilly, and so it was, we were all cub reporters at the same time. And I got the call from Terry O'Neill to go to Europe, live in Europe, and do all those sporting events. And then I got a call out of the blue from Paramount Television saying that, hey, we found an old tape of yours anchoring the news in Nashville. Would you be interested in coming and doing Entertainment Tonight? I hadn't seen the show. And so they said, well, when you come back to New York, you can do an audition with Mary Hart. And I said, what the heck? It's fine. So I did it though, like I was doing sports. The prompter comes up and I'm doing the celebrity birthdays like Bill Johnson is on the Vengan downhill. And I'm going, celebrating a birthday today. Oh, and Mary's like, what the, I did the audition. I didn't hear anything for months. And then I got the call from a guy named Frank Kelly and Lucy Salhaney, and who said, hey, we'd like for you to come. We're looking for a newsier approach to Entertainment Tonight. And by then I had seen the show. I thought, wow, this is unique. Nobody's done this before. And people didn't want to admit that they watched the show, right?
Right.
And when I say unique, I mean, there was no live syndicated television. It was this syndicated talk show hosts. They would do like 4 or 5 shows, and then they would send out the tapes to all the stations. Well, Entertainment Tonight, what they did, Paramount Television and Cox TV, is they said, okay, we'll send you a satellite receiver so you can receive this day and date if you stay with the show for 3 years, 5 years, or whatever it was. So, and if you're a sports reporter like me or a local news guy, you're really sort of not, you're not famous, of course. But all of a sudden, I'm on this show, and I was very interested in doing it because I thought, oh, this will help my music career. And that was really all I was always interested in, even when I was doing sports and doing music for sports. And so when I would finish the show at 1 p.m. and then I'd be in a studio working on Howie Mandel's cartoon show, stuff like that. But back in the day, to your point, there was the only show doing that, and there wasn't any cable really, I don't think.
Right.
And so I remember this: 23 million people a night watched that show. I mean, that's like
wow,
Super Bowl stuff, right? So
right.
I couldn't walk into a restaurant without somebody just coming up and saying hello, and it was scary. People would show up at my house and stuff.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It was really, and what happened back then was it wasn't salacious, right? Because there was no competition. So we were on Entertainment Tonight. I'm not sure how great this is, but it was fun at the time. We were in partnership with Mel Gibson or with Sean Penn or with Betty Davis. You know what I mean? It was
right.
You would call up and you say, okay, and they would make a deal. They would say, okay.
Right.
Do 4 pieces, and then we won't do anybody else's show or things like that. And then along came Access Hollywood and Entertainment and all the rest of that stuff. And then entertainment news became a commodity, on our phones and everything, and not as popular. But it wasn't mean back then, if you will.
Right. And again, like the aura of the celebrity back then was way different than it is now.
It was huge. I mean, it was. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it was also one of those things. You're not old enough to remember this, I don't think. But back in the day, when you went to your job or you went to school or whatever, everybody had seen whatever was on the Ed Sullivan Show. Everybody had seen whatever was on the Johnny Carson show, or even back, Sid Caesar, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or everybody had seen the Wizard of Oz. Now everything is so fragmented. You don't get that. And so when you get something, just to go back to what we were talking about, when you get something like everybody agrees that this is, quote, the basketball song, it's like, okay, now something has been created that I never thought would happen.
Yeah. Well, listen, if someone's doing like a sort of a recap of the 80s, CNN does that the decades, and they do the 80s. Like, the combination of John Tesh and Mary Hart was a legendary 80s combination into the 90s. So I didn't realize people were stalking you at your house, though. That's a little extreme for the host of an entertainment show.
Entertainment Tonight launched my music career. I mean, I couldn't get signed. I couldn't get signed to any label, and so I ended up. Gosh, my wife and I cobbled together a bunch of money for to put together a show for PBS on at Red Rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when that came out, that show, Entertainment Tonight covered it ad nauseum. They just covered it every single night, the making of, all the rest of that stuff. And that is the show that helped me leave television and follow my dream of being a full-time musician, because the show in 2.5 years raised more than $7-8 million for PBS. It started my record company. So a lot of it is, I mean, the things that I've learned are, be found ready, stuff's going to happen. And say yes to stuff that you wouldn't know. I mean, why did I say yes to the Entertainment Tonight thing? Why did I say yes to being a sports announcer?
Right.
It's
and you ended up on Entertainment Tonight for 10 years. 10 years.
Yeah.
Which is, if TV is a long gig.
I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to announce downhill skiing, but there are people you can learn from, and I was happy to do that.
So when I was doing a little research for this, there were two. So in my head, I've done this podcast for many years. So I know things, and I'm like, let me see what I can find out. And, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, Roundball Rock, Entertainment Tonight. I know you have a syndicated radio show, a music career, all this stuff. I'm like, let me see what else. And I'm looking through your Wikipedia page. The first thing I see is you were born and raised in Garden City, which is one town over from me. So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Then I see, you mentioned it a couple of times. You got hired by the local CBS affiliate here, CBS Channel 2 in New York. You were 22 years old when you got that job, youngest reporter ever. For CBS.
Yeah.
What
Scariest
was that
thing in
like?
my life. It was so scary.
I would imagine
it was so scary. It was like, and nobody was a bully, but I mean, if anybody remembers Jim Jensen back in the day,
I'd remember Jim Jensen.
Oh my gosh, he was the scariest guy. Well, the way it worked back then, I'm not sure how it works now, was that you got paid a base salary, and then if a story that you did got on the air, then you would get, I mean, in some cases, you get like $1,200 for that story, depending if it was an hour-long program or a half-hour program. So you were, sometimes you'd be assigned to a fire, right? And if you're on camera, you got more money, or if you were voiceover, not so much. And so you had to develop contacts. And so here I am in this. I still stay in touch with him. Here I am in this, fishbowl, the news right next to Cronkite, right? With John Stossel and Chris Morgan, the great police reporter, and Linda Ellerby, Meredith Vieira, and all the way down Dave Marish, if you remember that name, and Rollin Smith.
I do.
And I'm the little kid, and so they're all looking, and Stossel really took me under his wing. He said, "Hey, let me show you." Let me show you the ropes here. Let me show you the best way to get on the air and all that. And, the big joke was that you'd do a story, and then you'd be called to come on the set. It's almost like the Tonight Show. You'd be called on the set to, you see it today in local news, to introduce your say, well, John Tesh has a report on that. The Sikorsky S-76 helicopter crashed on the top of the whatever it was building. And John was on the first scene. John, what did you see? And so I'm talking to him live, and then I throw to my piece, right? So I come out of the piece, and Jensen was, famous for this. He goes, "Well, John, isn't it true that the S-76 Sikorsky, I'm butchering this, helicopter, had problems with the struts back in 1992?" And I'm like, yeah, I maybe, And then so it was embarrassing, right? So Stossel grabs me afterwards, and he goes, next time that happens, don't answer the question. I said, okay, what do I do? He goes, I said, you do this. You go, Jim, that may be true, but the survivors right now are what really we're talking. From that moment on, I knew how to handle Jim Jensen. But those,
to get hired in New York at 22, that is insane.
Well, and I only went into New York when I was probably you're saying way when you were a kid. I only went into New York. My dad worked in the Empire State Building. If it was, take your idiot son to work day, right? So New York was a very scary place. I only went there a couple of times to buy a trumpet. That was it. So
Especially
here I
back then,
am.
early 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was no internet, of course, and so if you wanted to
Right.
get a signal, if you want to get a story back from downtown, you had and they still have these now. You had a satellite dish, and you had to bounce it off the Empire State Building to get it back to. And we shot film. I'm telling you. I'm sorry, I'm getting so hyper about it.
No, it's
But
good. It's good.
we shot film. We just no videotape to shoot in the field. We shot film
Right.
with a 3-person crew, and you had to wait for the film to be developed before you could edit it. And a lot of times we ran it on the air wet. And there are people who are watching this right now. Remember when that happened?
Yeah.
And so those are, it's like
So
old guy telling stories.
yeah. No. It's great. It's great. But so in my journey of going through your Wikipedia page, I see, okay, born and grew up in Garden City. I'm like, oh, that's really good. And then I see CBS News at 22, and I'm like, oh, wow, that is really
Yeah,
good.
it's scary. Just scary.
And then I saw this sentence that was basically the mother lode. John Tesh dated Oprah Winfrey. Now, I'm not going to ask for
it was the mother lode for a while. It really was.
I'm not going to ask for any details. I'm just curious.
I'll tell you.
Listen, no one's going to ever be able to say, "Oh, we knew she'd be what she ended up becoming," because what she ended up becoming is like the biggest TV person of all time and the richest woman of all time, and TV legend and all that stuff. But did you have an inkling she had that quote unquote it, and that she'd be a big deal?
We all knew it. No, what happened? Here's how it happened. Was I'm 20. I'm 20. Okay, and I get hired in a big station in Nashville, and then had the hour-long news. And back in 1974, there wasn't an hour of news in Nashville, but the stations were very competitive, and they were the first like ENG, electronic news gathering stations. And so I'm on Channel 4, and Oprah at 19 is on Channel 5. So we would end up on a lot of the same stories, whether it was covering City Hall or a fire or wherever it was. And so, if they do this today, even with the White House reporters, it's you watch out for each other, right? And so if she had something I didn't have, we would exchange things like that. And so we became really close friends. And then we, I invited her out to dinner a couple of times, and sadly, it became funny for us, but we would go to these restaurants in Nashville. Again, this is 1974, and we would go to go for dinner or lunch, and there'd be some people who were not happy with a white man and a black woman, and they would leave the restaurant. And they would leave the restaurant, right? And
Wow.
and so this happened a couple of times, and we'd go out like once a week or something, and so then it got to the point where we're like, hey, which restaurant do you want to empty today? and it worked for a while until people got a little more, got
Wow.
faith more. But so to your question, did we know? I can tell you how I knew that she was, that she was going to be huge. And that is because there was no news. There wasn't an hour-long news in Nashville. They would send her on things like, I don't know, a kennel opening up or a flower party, or the general manager would be opening up an ice cream store or something on the side. And they would send Oprah, and she could do 20 minutes in the newscast interviewing people and asking the funniest questions, and people would come up to her and stuff. And if you're on a local station like that, Huell Hauser, if you've ever heard that name, Huell Hauser was the same way. She was a magnet for people who would come and talk to her. And so I don't know Oprah's whole story about who gave her first job. I think it was in Baltimore,
Right.
First talk show. But she had, as my mom would say, she had the gift of gab. She could make people very comfortable and at the same time be asking really probing questions. It sounds like my wife. My wife is like that gorgeous woman who walks up and can ask anybody anything.
It's a type. So did you ever have to, in those 10 years on Entertainment Tonight, cover Oprah? Was that ever weird?
Oh, no. In fact, we went, yes, it was the answer to covering Oprah. But when we celebrated, I think it was our 10th or 20th anniversary on Entertainment Tonight. So they had me and Mary, Oprah had me and Mary on her show.
Oh, okay.
And Oprah brought it up, and Mary that we had dated, and Mary had never heard of this. And so of course Mary just buried me. It was like 15 minutes in the show where she was asking Oprah everything,
Right.
Yeah. Mary and I became very close friends because at a company as big as Paramount or any of these companies. You know,
Yeah.
you have to really protect yourself. But there were, you know, I met some I didn't do a lot of interviews on ET because my deal was do the show and then so I can do my music. But I interviewed a lot of music artists, of course, because that's what I was into. So on any given day, I'd be talking to you know, Elton John or Eric Clapton or Yoko Ono, even, you know.
Right. It's a fascinating career because I remember, you know, in the 90s, everyone knew that song. And I don't think it was till years and years later that it sort of came out that it was your song. And it was like, oh my God, the guy we watch all this just on Entertainment Tonight was doing the Roundball Rock. So, and like you said, we didn't even know it was called Roundball Rock. So it's a fascinating career. I'm so happy you came on to do this. I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. And you're asking very challenging questions. People just want to want to know, how did you write the song?
Here's the most challenging question, if I can. We'd like to use the song as the intro just for this episode. Do I have to pay you or can I get a free?
No, you do not. No, you do not.
Okay. All right.
We officially white label the song for you. You could use
just for this episode, we're going to use that.
It'll sound like this. Okay.
I appreciate the permission.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm of course, when I saw Sports Illustrated come through because I'm like, okay, I don't want to nauseate people anymore talking about the song. But of course, I grew up reading Sports Illustrated, and not just for the swimsuit issues. Yes. I read it for the articles. Yeah.
Well, that's good. We like people like that.
Yeah, but I have to tell you that I couldn't think of what I was going to say. To your point about the people didn't know this song was Roundball Rock. Yeah. If you every now and then if you go on Twitter, somebody they'll hear the song and they go, "Oh, it's amazing," but who is John Tesh? And so some of the older Twitter folks will go, "Okay, let me educate you," and they'll go through a whole thing and they'll teach people.
Right. Yeah. Well, they deserve to be educated.
That along with if I walk into after 23 million people see a night on Entertainment Tonight and then that fades away, I walk into a Starbucks or around the corner here and people go. Once in a while, people go, "Didn't you used to be John Tesh?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I did." That's where I am right now.
Yeah. Well, you're back now, and
you're back.
You're back.
As Tracy Morgan said, John Tesh. What did he say? John Tesh still got it? Yeah. Come on.
And I'm sure we'll be seeing you. Maybe NBC will be doing some stuff with you leading up to the season and the new season, and then of course the theme song we all love comes back. John, I really appreciate this. Had a blast.
Let's go. Okay. Thanks.
We will.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good.
Take care.